That was incredible. That was a tremendous Thanksgiving, and I'm so moved. I hope you're moved as well. Now, I'm just so honored to introduce my Nehiyaw brother, National Chief Perry Bellegarde, who is from the Little Bear First Nation in Treaty 4 territory. He's served as Tribal Council representative for the Touchwood File Hills Capel Tribal Council, Chief of the Federation of Saskatchewan Indian Nations, and Saskatchewan Regional Chief for the Assembly of First Nations, as well as Chief and Councillor for the Little Black Bear First Nation. In 2014, the Chiefs and Assembly first elected Perry as National Chief of the Assembly of First Nations. He was re-elected to that position in July of 2018. National Chief Bellegarde has been recognized numerous times as a First Nations leader. And this morning, when I was reviewing this bio, he didn't want all of those recognitions announced, but there are many of them. National Chief Bellegarde remains grateful for the strength and vision he has gained from the elders. He vows to always place great importance on respecting their teachings. Their guidance has made him a man of foresight and a leader for generations. And I'm so honored to introduce him to you. Chief Bellegarde.
Thank you. Thank you, Trina. Mista Kakea no Temteko. Is this on? Can you hear? No, it's not on. I'm just going to yell. No. Mista, thank you, Trina, for that invitation and to be here, but the introduction as well. Mista Papikske Nehea Napsisi Ninaskamon. I'm happy to be here. Kinanaskom Tinoa Kakea no Temtik. To all my relatives, greet you all. Nista Kuskateo Muskasis Skunogin Utsinia. I'm from a small reserve called Little Black Bear, back home in Treaty 4 territory. Ogimao Piesu Oase Sega. So one of the names I carry is King Thunderbird Child. So I greet you all. Today, Anotauinan Cemento Kanaskumtin, to give thanks to the Creator for this day. I want to acknowledge the Creator for this wonderful, beautiful day and that beautiful rain that came down. Sitting on the side over here and listening to these young people, that was so amazing. Just listening, speak their language. That was so powerful. I want to acknowledge that again. To acknowledge the different nations and tribes here as well, the Mississaugas, Mississaugas and you credit how you say it, the Six Nations of the Grand, all of the tribes. In Canada, we say we're Indigenous peoples, we're First Nations peoples. In this state called Canada, this nation state, there's 634 First Nations across Canada. 634. Over 65 different nations and tribes in terms of languages. Many different nations and tribes. Mi'kmaq, Maliseet, Pasquamawari, Mohawk, Onondaga, Cayuga, Dene, Cree, Blackfoot, Northern Shoshone, Southern, there's 65. And we say we're First Nations people, are Indigenous peoples. And so this morning it is my task to welcome you all to Canada. And those tribes we say, or those nations we say, we're about 4% or 4.5% of Canada's population, about 1 million people, First Nations people across this land. But we don't say we're an ethnic minority. We're Indigenous peoples. And we have those 5 elements that are so important for that right to self-determination to be recognized. We have our own languages, our own lands, our own laws, our own peoples, and our own identifiable forms of government. 5 elements, very important. And that language is so fundamental to our identity. That right to self-determination. And we have rights, inherent rights, Aboriginal rights, treaty rights. But we also have responsibilities. Responsibilities given to us by the Creator to look after the land and water. Very important task to us. And in this country called Canada, in the Munyao way, our relatives' way, that white man way, there's common law, they say, and there's civil law in this country. 2 laws. But there's also a third law, very important law that must be recognized. Creator's law, natural law, First Nations law, if you will. And there has to be space in this great land for those laws to be recognized, because, my friends and relatives, I'm going to close with our worldview as First Nations peoples. And this gathering here is so important. This Parliament of World's Religions. Parliament of World's Religions. Thousands of people from around the world. Spiritual people, spiritual leaders, people that pray. People of spirit. And to acknowledge these people, these names, I don't know these people, but I'm going to say their names to acknowledge them. This man, Rob Sellers and Larry Greenfield, they're from that side over there and that state side. We never created borders as First Nations people, but the chair of the Board of Trustees, Rob Sellers, the executive director, Larry Greenfield. And then there's 2 important people here on this side in this territory called Toronto, now Canada, Karen Hamilton and Zol Kasamali, the co-chairs. Because it's hard to bring Indigenous people's worldviews into some of these institutions' mainstream places. So I acknowledge those 4 people. But as well, Mr. Bob Goulet and Diane Longboat for really pushing for what's happening today. And so I want to lift them up and say, Nyongoa. And Bob said early on he's a Anishinaabe. I say, Bob, you're not too shabby for Anishinaabe. So I lift them all up in a good way to thank them. And so the work here now, the work of you all here, and the work of the people that aren't here, is something, again, this worldview, and how we're all connected, because in our teachings, in our ways, we say sometimes we don't see color. And these little ones here acknowledged, as best I could understand the language they're saying, that thank you and acknowledgement, prayer or acknowledgement, that we give acknowledgement and thanks, of course, to the Creator. How you know that one, the great mystery. But we also acknowledge the ones that sit in the east and the south and the west, the north. We give thanks and acknowledgement to the ones that have their jobs there. We also give acknowledgement and thanks to Mother Earth, where all good things come from, our mother. We also give thanks to Father Sky and Grandmother Moon, Grandfather Sun, our relatives, the star people. We give thanks for the male plants, the female plants. You need both for life. And we give thanks to our relatives, the 4-legged ones. We give thanks to the ones that fly, the ones that swim, the ones that crawl. We also acknowledge four very special grandmother spirits. Very special and very important. The ones that look after the rainwater, the fresh water, the salt water, and the power when life comes, water breaks. So we acknowledge that. And so when we come together as the 2-leggeds, that's why we say we see no color sometimes. We're the 2-leggeds. I don't care if you're black, white, yellow, pink, red, or purple. We're the 2-leggeds. And so we're part of that environment. We're part of that worldview. We're part of that family. And that's so important to recognize now in 2018, because there's a big challenge. There's a big global challenge we must work together to fix and correct. And that is climate change, and that's the greenhouse gas emissions that are coming, and the pollution to this world, to this land and water. And so we need everyone to put our energies and our thoughts and our minds and our prayers, how we can keep that family that I just described healthy for future generations. 7 generations, Otini, in the future, Otini, Gan, down that future road, that we must put our hearts and minds together. And if we can use that worldview in everything we do, locally, regionally, nationally, internationally, we'll have something for those 7 generations down the road. And if we can put our 7 sacred teachings, truth and honesty, love, respect, courage, wisdom, humility, All those things will guide us. So, my friends, my relatives, nista kinenaskom tinawak kakia no temte kanwako magnak, for listening to my words. Let's keep our minds and hearts together for those 7 generations o tinikan. Egose, kinaskom tinawaw.
Come with me this way. Thank you, National Chief.
Thank you very much, National Chief. It's our way as Indigenous people, especially when we know each other, to tease each other. As my brother Enzo Kit Perry tells me, that if we tease you, it means we love you. So National Chief Bellegarde, he's Cree, and we forgive him for that.